people who do the real heavy lifting on campus, who keep the campus clean, those folks make $8, $9 an hour. Clearing the path for collective bargaining and saying that states do not have the authority to take that right away would be one less obstacle.
Let's wrap up the program talking about the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act, which was put forward in Congress last week. That would, one of the things, and we've talked about this multiple times on the program, that the National Labor Relations Act, and we actually just talked about how, maybe it's not actually the most important thing, but nevertheless, it's not completely worthless, and it's not worth analyzing, right? And so the National Labor Relations Act left out key parts of the working class when it was passed, including farm workers, domestic workers, federal employees, and importantly, for this conversation, public sector employees in state governments and municipal governments. So when the National Labor Relations Act was passed, it left the decision about whether or not those groups of employees are going to have rights to the individual states and municipalities. And so you can obviously imagine that there is a vast and complicated web of public sector labor law in states across the country, from states where collective bargaining is outright banned. It's completely illegal, which is just a fascinating thing, because in places where public sector collective bargaining is illegal, those states are led by, political elites who hide behind concepts like freedom and the First Amendment, which includes freedom of association and freedom of speech and all this kind of stuff. That they're all they're universally come from states where the elite class wraps themselves up in that type of rhetoric about freedom, while they ban collective bargaining, while they ban the ability to negotiate, to speak with your employers on equal footings if you are a public sector, state, or municipal employee. It's completely backwards. It is completely antithetical to any real, version of or idea of freedom that one could have. And but you have to be used to that. If you're a working person in the United States, you should always and universally be extremely skeptical when somebody comes to you talking about how much freedom the government is going to be giving you. That's that you gotta sometimes the government can give you freedom, and it's good and we should take it. But a lot of times the people who are going around talking about freedom and liberty they want freedom and liberty for the bosses, for the employers, for the people who make money off of money instead of money from labor. So in Congress last week, the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act was reintroduced. It has been introduced before. It obviously has not passed, and it obviously will not pass this session. But what the law would do, if passed, is it would basically nullify all of the anti-labor public sector labor laws in the country. So in places like across the South where collective bargaining is banned by statute, or in Alabama where collective bargaining is banned by case law, those laws and those standards would be overturned in favor of a regime where public sector workers have the ability, have the freedom, have the liberty to unionize and to collectively bargain over their wages and working conditions, just like workers in the private sector.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
And just like employers in the private sector, public sector, municipal governments, state governments, would not be forced to give workers anything. They would not be forced to, have great wages or great benefits if workers unionize. That's something that workers would have to get themselves. They would have to be able to win elections themselves. They would have to be able to use their power to pull down better benefits and better working conditions from state and municipal governments. But it would, it would open avenues to public sector workers that are not available currently. So that's it would be a very big step forward for public sector workers in the country, something that should obviously happen, especially if you care about freedom and liberty and things like this in the First Amendment. And so, I wanted to highlight that, spend a little bit of time talking about that and talking about the situation of public sector workers because of, and try to keep that in the conversation so that, hopefully, and at some point in the future, we do have a Congress where, the public is behind this idea enough that the Congress would pass it. Because obviously, everybody deserves the right to collective bargaining. Everybody deserves the right to freedom of association. And it should not be impeded just because you work for a state and municipal government. And, obviously, a lot of state and municipal government employees face really unique issues. We covered for a while, right in a row, there was a public sector municipal government fight in Selma, Alabama, where I think, if I'm remembering actually, correctly, they went on strike for a few days, where the groundskeepers and, lawn maintenance folks, the folks who cut the grass, they were being paid something like $8 an hour. It's and Jacksonville State University. We just finished talking 2 weeks ago. We talked to folks in the United Campus Workers from Jacksonville State University, where some of the people who do the real heavy lifting on campus, who keep the campus clean, who make sure that the grounds are cared for and facilities are kept clean and operational. Those folks make $8-9 an hour. It's absolutely unacceptable, and clearing the path for collective bargaining would be and statutorily granting them that right and saying that states do not have the authority to take that right away would be good and would be one less obstacle for those workers in their fight to get living wages and get the full value that, or more of the value that they produce for the public. So.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, because public sector workers so often throughout our country don't have union representation, they have less power to fight back against the corporations and politicians that do the corporate bidding, right? And as they try to privatize and eliminate public services, they're at a disadvantage when it comes to defending not just their own livelihoods, but all of us as the public. So, from where I'm sitting, the ability for these folks to collectively bargain and secure union contracts would actually improve public services. It's going to have higher standards for worker safety and pay and benefits, which then turns into better worker retention. To Professor Goldfield's point earlier, there's less turnover, less training cost, better communication between the workers and their employers. So there's lots of advantages there for all of us to see public sector workers gain the rights that they deserve. And if you're a teacher or a sanitation worker in Alabama, why do you deserve less than a teacher or sanitation worker in California or New York? Yeah. I don't think you do. So I appreciate the folks who have reintroduced this bill. I'd love to see it be a priority in Congress, understanding that not much is happening there, but we'd love to see this as a priority, and I think it probably will take federal action because we know the dynamics here in the South. They will fight it tooth and nail, but we need changes to public sector labor law. It's essential.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m., and we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.